Hello and welcome to Story Verdict. Today I'm going to tell you the story of mocked as trash and forced to eat with the staff at my brother's wedding. During the vows, I revealed I own the estate and evicted the entire family. The story goes like this. The first time my mother called me trash at my brother's wedding, she did it quietly enough to preserve her smile for the photographers. She stood beneath an arch of imported white roses in the entrance hall of Blackwood Manor, one hand resting against the pearls at her throat, and the other gripping my elbow hard enough to leave crescent marks in my skin. While 300 guests drifted through the marble gallery behind us, carrying champagne and speaking in the careful, polished voices of people who had been invited, because their names looked valuable on a seating chart. "You cannot walk into Adrian's wedding dressed like this," she whispered, looking at my Navy department store dress as though it were stained. "Celeste's family had senators, bankers, and real business leaders here. You look like someone who came to deliver flowers." I looked down at the dress. It was clean fitted and appropriate for an afternoon ceremony. I had bought it 10 years earlier for my first public procurement hearing, before Aegis Global became large enough to own ports, hospitals, data centers, construction companies, security networks, and most of the debt supporting my family's lifestyle. I had worn it deliberately because it reminded me who I was before money made every room dishonest. The invitation said formal, I said. "This is formal." My mother's smile sharpened. "For people like you, perhaps." Behind her, my brother Adrian was laughing with his groomsmen beside a staircase wrapped in gold ribbon. He wore a custom tuxedo that cost more than the first car I ever owned. His bride, Celeste Warren, stood beneath the chandelier wearing a diamond necklace that belonged to the Aegis Hospitality Collection and a dress insured for $200,000. The estate surrounding them was my private property. The wine, furniture, flowers, musicians, lighting, catering, transportation, and even the ring on Celeste's finger had been paid through accounts I controlled. No one in my family knew. They believed Blackwood Manor belonged to an anonymous billionaire who rented it for discreet events. They believed I worked as a low-level logistics coordinator for Aegis Global, a company they mentioned with reverence while speaking to me with contempt. They believed Adrian had secured the estate through his connections, though the event coordinator had accepted his reservation only after I approved it. They believed our parents owned the hilltop villa where they had lived for 9 years, though I had purchased it through an Aegis trust after the bank threatened foreclosure. They believed Adrian's development company survived because of his brilliance, not because I had quietly bought his loans each time it approached default. My mother looked toward a group of photographers near the ballroom. "There is still time to fix this," she said. "The catering supervisor has an extra uniform." I stared at her. "You want me to dress as staff at my brother's wedding? Do not be dramatic. You will help serve the family table and remain near the service area during the ceremony. It will look more natural than having you seated with the Warrens. I am Adrian's sister, biologically." The word entered between us like a blade. She glanced towards Celeste's mother, who was approaching in pale gold silk. "Do this one thing without humiliating us. One thing." My family had used that phrase for 20 years. One tuition payment because Adrian's future depended on it. One mortgage rescue because my parents had sacrificed enough. One emergency loan because a failed restaurant could ruin Adrian's confidence. One legal settlement because a public lawsuit would embarrass the family. One car, one investment, one wedding deposit, one house renovation, one private club membership, one final favor that always became the foundation for the next. I had become the invisible machine beneath their comfort, and because the machine never demanded applause, they decided it had no owner. "Where is the uniform?" I asked. Relief softened my mother's face. "In the service hall. I knew you would eventually understand." She touched my cheek as though rewarding a child. "Try not to speak too much tonight." Celeste's father thinks Adrian comes from a disciplined family. I followed the corridor toward the kitchens while my mother turned to greet the Warren family. Each step carried me deeper into a house designed for my privacy. Blackwood Manor had been built in 1912 by a railroad financier who believed old European architecture could make new American money look inherited. Aegis acquired it 6 years earlier through a distressed estate auction. I restored the roof, rewired the building, preserved the library, and converted the underground wine rooms into a secure command center for board retreats. The public had never seen my name connected to the deed. I used the estate when I needed silence, when regulatory battles became too loud, or when I wanted to remember that ownership could exist without performance. Adrian had visited once before the wedding. He called the manor excessive and spent the afternoon photographing himself beside the vintage cars in the carriage house. He never asked who owned it. He assumed powerful things existed to be borrowed by men willing to act familiar. In the service hall, a catering manager named Lila Morgan waited beside a rack of black uniforms. She had managed Aegis events for 4 years and knew exactly who I was. Her eyes widened when she saw my mother leave me at the door. "Chairwoman," she whispered. "Not tonight," I said. "Call me Rachel." My name was Rachel Quinn. Public filings identified Aegis Global's controlling owner only through the Mercer Sentinel Trust, named after my grandmother's family. Industry magazines speculated that the company belonged to a retired defense contractor, a European sovereign fund, or a consortium of technology founders. My face appeared occasionally in specialist publications under the title Chief Systems Architect, but few photographs circulated beyond internal circles. I had built Aegis quietly after my father's construction business collapsed when I was 22. I began by designing logistics software for disaster response teams, then used the licensing revenue to purchase failing infrastructure companies whose executives underestimated the woman reviewing their warehouse data. Over 12 years, the company grew through ports, medical supply systems, renewable power, secure banking platforms, and real estate finance. By 34, I controlled an empire large enough to attract politicians, enemies, and people who confuse proximity with entitlement. My family remained outside it because I hid the truth and because they never asked questions that were not about access. Lila held up the uniform. "Should I contact security?" "No. Your mother cannot order you to serve at your own property. She can ask. I can choose. Why would you choose this?" I looked through the service window toward the ballroom. Adrian stood beneath my chandelier, explaining to Celeste's father how he had personally negotiated the estate. My mother was introducing herself to executives who had attended because Aegis had business with the Warren family. My father, George Quinn, sat near the fireplace, nursing a drink and avoiding conflict, as he had avoided it my entire life. "Because tonight they intend to reveal more than they realize," I said. Lila did not understand, but she trusted me enough to stop arguing. She helped me into black trousers, a white shirt, and a fitted service jacket. I placed my hair into a low knot and removed the small diamond earrings I had inherited from my grandmother. Before leaving the room, I took out my phone and sent one message to my chief counsel, Daniel Cho. "Begin observation. No intervention without my direct authorization. Midnight protocol remains conditional." His response arrived immediately. "Understood. Receiver, compliance team, and court officer remain on standby." I had created the Midnight Protocol 5 years earlier after discovering that a regional executive had been using Aegis subsidiaries to fund a private political network. It was not a magical button capable of erasing people from banks or confiscating property without law. It was a coordinated enforcement process. When activated after verified contractual breach, fraud, or asset risk, it froze Aegis-controlled credit lines, revoked access, secured pledged collateral, preserved digital evidence, notified regulators, and transferred operations to independent receivers. Every action required documents signed before midnight and became effective at 12:01 a.m., the first moment after the expiry of the grace periods written into the relevant contracts. Adrian's company had 3 separate Aegis-backed loans with cure periods ending that night. My parents' occupancy agreement at Cedar Crest Villa expired at midnight after repeated defaults and fraudulent refinancing attempts. The wedding vendors were operating under conditional payment authorizations because Adrian had misrepresented sponsor funds. The diamond ring on Celeste's hand had been purchased through an Aegis luxury credit facility using false company statements. The wine collection, rented art, and antique furniture remained Aegis property. Nothing legally belonged to my family simply because they had arranged it attractively. I had delayed enforcement because Adrian asked for time to complete a major investment deal after the wedding. I agreed to one final extension. Then our audit discovered that his plan involved selling Cedar Crest behind our parents' backs and using the proceeds to fund a speculative project with Celeste's family. The villa could not legally be sold because my trust owned it, but Adrian believed our parents held clear title. He had persuaded them to sign blank estate planning documents that actually transferred whatever interest they possessed into his development company. My father signed without reading. My mother signed because Adrian promised them a penthouse after the sale. They did not know the penthouse did not exist. I had prepared midnight protocol to protect the property, employees, vendors, and investors if Adrian proceeded. The wedding would determine whether he stopped. I moved through the ballroom carrying champagne while guests admired the estate. Several Aegis executives recognized me and almost reacted. A look was enough to stop them. I served Celeste's father, Senator Warren, who handed me his empty glass without looking at my face. I served my mother, who adjusted the tray because she thought the spacing looked untidy. I served Adrian, who stared at my uniform and smiled. Mother finally convinced you to be useful, he said. I have always been useful. You know what I mean? You usually do. He leaned closer. Do not start anything tonight. Celeste's family thinks you work hourly warehouse shifts. I work more hours than that. Rachel. His expression hardened. I need one evening without your jealousy. Jealousy of what? He gestured toward the ballroom, the guests, the estate, and the woman approaching in white lace. A life that matters. Celeste joined us. She had met me twice before and never remembered my name. Is this your sister? She asked. Adrian laughed. Technically. Rachel has always preferred simple work. That is admirable. Celeste said, using the tone wealthy people reserve for labor they would never perform. My father says ordinary employment builds humility. Does he have ordinary employment? I asked. Adrian's eyes flashed. Celeste missed the edge. He served in the Senate for 23 years. Of course. She studied the tray. Could you find the reserve champagne? The staff said the 1996 vintage is restricted, but Adrian promised my bridesmaids could have it. The wine belongs to the estate owner. Adrian has permission. Does he? He told me. Then perhaps he should show you the authorization. Adrian stepped between us. Bring the wine, Rachel. No. Celeste blinked. Adrian lowered his voice. Do not embarrass me. The reserve collection is not part of the event package. How would you know? I read the contract. You carried boxes for the event coordinator. That does not make you management. He took one glass from the tray and drank it quickly. Stay in your place. I thought of the first time he had said those words. I was 17, sitting at our father's desk, correcting an invoice that would have cost the family business $40,000. Adrian walked in, saw me reviewing payroll, and told me accounts were not a girl's place. 2 months later, he borrowed company money to impress friends. By the time Dad discovered it, the business was already failing. I paid the emergency payroll from a university innovation grant and never told employees where the money came from. Adrian accepted their gratitude. My place is exactly where I choose to stand, I said. He laughed. Tonight, your place is beside the kitchen. He led Celeste away. I continued serving. Each humiliation felt strangely distant because I knew the building, contracts, and bank accounts beneath the performance. Yet knowledge did not erase pain. Wealth cannot make rejection harmless. My mother's contempt had formed long before I owned anything. And part of me still wanted her to look at the woman in the service uniform and choose her without being shown a balance sheet. That hunger was the most dangerous debt I carried. At 6:30, the ceremony rehearsal began in the lower garden. Moved toward rows of white chairs, facing an altar beneath ancient oak trees. The legal wedding would occur at 7, followed by dinner, speeches, dancing, and a midnight fireworks display. Adrian had insisted the ceremony cross into the next day because Celeste believed 1201 marked the beginning of their new dynasty. The symbolism amused Daniel when he reviewed the loan expiry times. I instructed the estate staff to prepare every system without changing the schedule. I carried a tray along the side path when I heard Adrian and Celeste speaking behind the hedge near the old fountain. I would have continued walking if Celeste had not said, "Your parents cannot stay at Cedar Crest after we sell it." I stopped. Adrian answered, they won't. We will place them somewhere smaller. Your mother thinks she is moving into the city penthouse. She thinks many things. You promised her. I needed her signature. Celeste laughed softly. That is cold. It is practical. Cedar Crest is worth at least $9 million. We sell after the honeymoon, clear the private lender, and put the rest into Warren Quay. My father wants $15 million from your side. The Aegis deal covers the gap. You still do not have the final commitment. I will after tonight. Their executives are here. Once the wedding connects our families, they cannot afford to reject us. And if they do, I use the estate as leverage. This estate is rented. The owner is hidden. Hidden owners are usually old men who care more about access than paperwork. You sound very certain, because people with property always want political protection. Your father provides that. Celeste lowered her voice. What about your sister? Rachel has no claim. She thinks Dad left her some savings, but Mother handled that years ago. Could she challenge the sale? With what money? She serves drinks for a living. They both laughed. My hand tightened around the tray. I had known the plan from documents, but hearing Adrian describe our parents as obstacles changed something. He was willing to remove them from a house I had bought to protect them, just as they had been willing to place me among the staff to protect his image. The family hierarchy had never been about love. It was a chain of utility. My parents used me to finance Adrian. Adrian used them to reach wealth. Celeste used him to deliver capital. Each person looked downward for someone else to pay. The ring is secure, at least, Celeste said. $250,000, fully paid. Adrian hesitated. The credit closes next week. You said it was paid. The jeweler is part of an Aegis luxury network. Once the development line opens, the balance disappears into the project financing. So it is financed, temporarily. My father will destroy you if the ring is repossessed. It won't be. The contract lists collateral, standard language. What collateral? Some family holdings. Adrian, stop worrying. Tomorrow we control the Quay project, Cedar Crest, and the Aegis partnership. Celeste exhaled. Your confidence is attractive until it sounds like fraud. It is not fraud if everyone profits. I took out my phone and sent Daniel a second message. Intent confirmed. Preserve audio. Prepare full activation. Await final trigger. His reply. Understood. Court officers have entered the outer perimeter. I walked away before they saw me. In the service corridor, I set down the tray because my hands were shaking. Lila found me near the linen room. Do you need medical assistance? No. Do you want them removed now? Not yet. Rachel, they are discussing selling your parents' house. They cannot sell it. That is not the point. She was right. Lila had grown up caring for two younger siblings and recognized betrayal without needing legal analysis. The ceremony begins in 20 minutes, she said. You do not have to carry another tray. I know. I removed the service jacket, folded it, and placed it on the shelf. Bring the Navy garment case from the secure suite. Her expression changed. You are doing it during the vows, when the officiant asks for objections. That is theatrical. They built a theater. And you intend to burn it? No. I intend to turn on the lights. Lila nodded and left. I entered the private office beneath the west staircase. Daniel Cho appeared on the secure screen from the command room. He was 51% and nearly impossible to surprise. That evening, he looked concerned. We have enough evidence to activate without public intervention, he said. I know. Then why wait? Because Adrian is about to enter a legal marriage, partly based on fraudulent financial representations. Celeste participated. She understood some of it, not all. You plan to warn her during the ceremony. I plan to tell the truth while she can still decide whether to sign the marriage license. The license has not been executed. The officiant signs after the vows. Daniel reviewed the schedule. Correct. Then she deserves the facts before becoming legally tied to him. And your parents? They deserve to hear the plan to sell Cedar Crest. The audio can be provided privately. They made me staff in front of everyone. He held my gaze through the screen. That is not a legal reason. No, it is a personal one. You are allowed personal motives. You are not allowed to disguise them as governance. I am not disguising them. Good. He paused. Midnight protocol activates only after your biometric confirmation. No funds move before 12:01. Security will not remove guests. Personal belongings remain protected. Medical equipment, food, and essential transportation are excluded from seizure. The ring can be secured only after notice because it is pledged collateral. Cedar Crest enforcement begins tomorrow morning, not tonight. Your parents have 30 days under the occupancy statute, unless fraud risk changes the court order. The emergency order permits immediate possession of Blackwood. Yes, because this estate is private event property and the contract ends at midnight. Guests must depart by 12:30. That is not eviction from a residence. Understood. Adrian's office and company systems lock at 12:01. Employees retain payroll access. Vendors are paid from reserve funds. The Quay proposal is suspended. Bank compliance notices release at activation. And the Warrens, no action unless separate evidence supports it. Good. I wanted consequence, not indiscriminate destruction. Revenge stories often flatten every person near the villain into acceptable collateral. Real power requires precision. Celeste had insulted me, accepted false claims, and participated in the plan to displace my parents. Her father had pressured Adrian for capital. None of that gave me authority to seize lawful property or destroy unrelated careers. The Midnight Protocol would target contracts, assets, and representations connected to verified fraud. Anything beyond that belonged to courts. Lala returned with the garment case. Inside was an ivory silk suit tailored in Milan, a structured jacket with black satin lapels, wide-leg trousers, and a silver oak brooch representing the Aegis Legacy Trust. It was the most recognizable symbol I owned. Photographs of the brooch had appeared in rare board announcements without showing my face. Senior executives would understand before I spoke. I changed clothes while Lala helped remove pins from my hair. "Do you want makeup?" she asked. "No jewelry?" I put my grandmother's diamond earrings back on. "These shoes?" "The black pair." She knelt to fasten them, then looked up. "Your mother made you wear a uniform in the house you own." "Yes. Do not let that become the only thing you remember about tonight." "What else should I remember?" "The kitchen staff saw you carry trays without treating them as beneath you. The junior server saw executives follow your signals without understanding why." Power revealed itself before the suit. I touched her shoulder. "You sound like Daniel." "That is insulting." The ceremony began beneath the sky turning violet over the trees. I watched from the upper gallery as guests took their seats. Adrian stood beneath the arch beside his groomsmen. Celeste walked down the aisle with Senator Warren, the lace train of her dress crossing stone owned by my trust. My mother sat in the front row, smiling through tears. My father sat beside her, already drinking. An empty chair at the end of the family row bore a small card with my name. When I asked why it had not been assigned, told me my mother wanted photographs proving I was invited while instructing staff not to seat me. That detail hurt more than the uniform. They wanted the appearance of family without my presence. The officiant welcomed guests and spoke about partnership, truth, and the joining of two families. Adrian promised loyalty. Celeste promised trust. The words sounded expensive and fragile. When the officiant asked whether anyone knew of a reason the marriage should not proceed, the garden remained quiet for one breath. Then I stepped from the gallery and said, "I do." Every head turned. My mother's face changed first. She saw the suit, earrings, and brooch, but not yet the meaning. Adrian stared at me with fury. "Rachel," he hissed. "What are you doing?" I walked down the aisle slowly. Cameras lifted. Several Aegis executives rose without being told. Celeste looked from them to me. Senator Warren narrowed his eyes at the brooch. He had seen it in confidential financing meetings. "That symbol," he said. I stopped before the altar. Before Celeste signs a marriage license, she should understand the financial representation supporting this ceremony. Adrian laughed toward the guests. "My sister is having an episode. She has always resented my success. I heard you discussing the sale of Cedar Crest." My mother turned toward him. "What?" Adrian's expression flickered. "She lies." I removed a small control card from my pocket and signaled the production team. The screens beside the ceremony arch changed from wedding photographs to audio wave files. Adrian's recorded voice filled the garden. "Cedar Crest is worth at least $9 million. We sell after the honeymoon, clear the private lender, and put the rest into Warren Quay." Celeste's voice followed. "Your mother thinks she is moving into the city penthouse. Adrian, she thinks many things." I needed her signature. The recording ended. My mother stood. "Adrian?" He looked at the sound technicians. "This is illegal." Daniel Cho stepped from the side aisle. The recording was captured in an estate area covered by disclosed event security monitoring. Counsel reviewed it before playback. Adrian pointed at me. You were spying. I was carrying the champagne you ordered. Celeste stepped away from him. You told me they agreed to sell. They signed blank papers, my mother whispered. Adrian turned toward her. You wanted the penthouse. You promised it existed. It will exist after the development closes. Senator Warren addressed Adrian. Is Cedar Crest titled to your parents? Yes. No, I said. The screens changed to the deed structure. Cedar Crest Residential Trust. Sole beneficial owner, Mercer Sentinel Holdings. The mortgage history followed, showing the defaults, acquisition, and occupancy agreement. My father stared at the dates. Mercer Sentinel paid the foreclosure? Yes, I said. 9 years ago. My mother looked at me. How do you know? Because Mercer Sentinel belongs to me. Silence moved through the garden. Adrian shook his head. You work for Aegis. I founded Aegis. The screens changed again. My official profile appeared. Rachel Eleanor Quinn, founder, executive chairwoman, controlling beneficiary of the Mercer Sentinel Trust. Beneath it appeared the Aegis ownership chart, major subsidiaries, and the Blackwood Manor deed. Guests gasped. Celeste's father stood completely still. My mother looked toward the estate as though the walls had betrayed her. You own this place? She asked. Personally, through the Blackwood Heritage Trust. Adrian laughed, but fear hollowed the sound. This is another performance. Aegis is controlled by foreign investors. Daniel approached and bowed his head. Aegis Global recognizes chairwoman Rachel Quinn as controlling owner and executive authority. Behind him came members of the Aegis board, my chief financial officer, external counsel, independent receivers, and 2 court officers. The guests recognized them. Adrian did too. His face went pale. You hid this from us, my mother said. For 10 years, you told people I loaded boxes for a logistics company. You never asked what I designed, managed, or owned. We are your family. You made me serve at my brother's wedding because you thought my dress looked poor. I was protecting Adrian's reputation. From his sister, she lowered her voice. We would have treated you differently if we knew. The sentence escaped before she could stop it. The entire front row heard. That is why I did not tell you. I said, I wanted respect that did not require an asset statement. My father stood unsteadily. You bought Cedar Crest after your business defaulted. The bank scheduled foreclosure. I paid the debt through Mercer Sentinel and gave you a protected occupancy agreement. Your mother said Adrian arranged it. Adrian knew only that an investor intervened. Adrian stepped forward. I brought the lender. You introduced a broker who charged the company 6%. I purchased the loan after the broker failed. My company has relationships with Aegis. Your company owes Aegis-linked lenders $48 million. The screens displayed the debt structure. 3 facilities, 2 defaults, 1 grace period expiring at midnight. Adrian looked toward the investors seated behind Senator Warren. Those facilities are performing. Your financial statements concealed $12 million in contingent liabilities and used Cedar Crest as collateral despite having no ownership interest. Mother signed authorization. She signed documents you misrepresented. She benefited. That does not cure fraud. Celeste removed her hand from his. What about Warren Quay? Suspended pending review. Daniel said, Aegis has not approved partnership financing. She looked at Adrian. You told my father it was committed. The chairwoman was attending the wedding. You thought that meant consent? People do not attend without interest. I almost smiled. You invited me to carry glasses. Senator Warren turned toward me. Chairwoman Quinn, my family entered preliminary discussions based on documents provided by Adrian. We will cooperate with any review. That is wise. Celeste touched the ring on her finger. Is this financed through Aegis too? The screens showed the luxury credit agreement. The diamond was pledged collateral under a facility tied to Adrian's company. She stared at him. You said it was fully paid. It will be after the Quay closing. There is no closing. There will be. You lied before the vows. I was building our future with borrowed property, false contracts, and your parents' house. He reached for her. She stepped away. Do not touch me. The officiant quietly closed the marriage register. The license remained unsigned. Adrian looked at me with naked hatred. You planned to destroy my wedding. I planned to protect assets and investors if you continued fraud. You decided to build a wedding around the fraud. You could have told me privately. I warned your company through 3 default notices, 2 compliance letters, and a final cure demand. You ignored them because you assumed Aegis needed your political connections. You knew I never saw those. Your electronic signature acknowledged all 6. He looked toward his attorney. The man lowered his eyes. My mother rushed toward me. Not this. Whatever Adrian did, he is your brother. That relationship never stopped him from using our parents' home. He made a mistake. He created an investment structure around property he did not own. You can fix it. Why should I? Because this family raised you. I looked at the woman who had hidden me beside the service doors of my own estate. I financed this family for 10 years. The screens displayed a financial timeline. Mortgage rescue. Adrian's business loans. My parents' medical expenses, property taxes, club fees, renovations, tuition, legal settlements, wedding deposits. The total exceeded $86 million. My father sat down hard. My mother stared at the figures. That money came from Aegis, she said. Yes. Adrian said he negotiated the loans. He applied. I approved the rescue terms after compliance rejected him. Adrian shouted, "You let me think I earned everything. You accepted praise for support you never investigated. You could have invested openly. Then you would have treated me like a bank instead of trash. You are enjoying this." The accusation landed because part of it was true. Part of me wanted you to feel the humiliation you assigned to me, I said. That is why every legal action was reviewed by independent counsel before tonight. My anger does not decide what happens at midnight. Your contracts do. Daniel opened a black folder. The court has appointed an independent receiver over Quinn Development Group's pledged assets effective 12/1 a.m. The order preserves employee wages, active construction sites, lawful vendor payments, and client deposits. Executive access will be suspended. Personal assets not tied to fraud remain untouched. Adrian stared at the folder. You are taking my company. The lenders are enforcing after default, Daniel said. Chairwoman Quinn recused herself from the receiver appointment. She owns the lenders. The debt is held through regulated subsidiaries with independent boards. Same thing. Legally and operationally, no. My mother looked toward the manor. What happens to the wedding? The ceremony has not produced a legal marriage, I said. The event contract expires at midnight. Guests are staying overnight. Only 12 guest suites were included, and those reservations terminate at 12:30 because Adrian did not pay the final balance. Celeste, our mother, gasped. He said the estate was a gift. It was conditionally provided through an event sponsorship account that failed compliance review. Senator Warren's face darkened. Adrian, I was waiting for Aegis to release funds. You represented the rooms as paid. They were going to be paid. Celeste turned toward the officiant. There will be no wedding. Adrian grabbed her wrist. Do not do this, because my sister created a spectacle. She pulled free. Your sister did not create the documents. She manipulated everything. You lied to me. He looked around for support. My mother stepped toward him. We can still have the dinner. People will calm down. Celeste stared at her. Your son planned to sell your home. Families solve things privately. That is why he believed he could. She removed the diamond ring. Who owns this now? Daniel answered. The jeweler retains a secured interest. You may surrender it voluntarily tonight or retain possession pending notice. No one will remove it from your hand. Celeste walked to the nearest table and placed the ring inside an empty champagne glass. Take it. Adrian looked as if she had struck him. Senator Warren guided his daughter away from the altar. The guests began murmuring, some leaving their chairs, others recording. I lifted the microphone. The event will continue as dinner for any guest who wishes to remain until midnight. No one will be detained. All personal belongings are safe. At 12:01, Aegis property designated in the contract will be secured. Transportation is available. Adrian laughed. You want everyone to watch. You invited everyone to witness your triumph. They are free to leave before consequence. You have hated me since childhood. No, I spent years saving you because it made you feel superior. It made me feel responsible. Same thing. No. Responsibility asks whether help changes behavior. Superiority asks whether someone remains beneath you. You preferred the second. He stepped close enough for security to move. I raised one hand, stopping them. You could have told me you owned Aegis, he said. Would you have stopped using our parents? I would have made you partner. That is the problem. You see relationships as access, and you do not. You hid billions to test us. I hid my ownership because kidnapping threats and hostile acquisitions made privacy necessary. I also watched how you treated me without it. Both are true. You set us up. I gave you loans, extensions, legal notices, and one final deadline. Then this is your revenge. Partly. But the employees will keep their jobs, the projects will continue, our parents will not be homeless, and Celeste can leave without becoming legally tied to your fraud. Revenge would not require that restraint. My father stood again. His voice shook. Rachel, did you hear him say he would sell Cedar Crest? Yes. Would we have been homeless? No, the trust owns the property. The sale would have failed, and the fraud would have triggered eviction proceedings. He looked at Adrian. You lied about the penthouse. Adrian rubbed his face. I needed the signatures. Once the project closed, I would have found something. Something smaller. My mother whispered. You said we deserved the city. You live in a $9 million house you do not own. Because Rachel bought it. Because I kept this family standing. He pointed at me, and now she wants applause. I want the truth to stop being carried by people you call insignificant. My father turned toward me. Why didn't you tell me? You never asked how the mortgage disappeared. Your mother handled finances. You chose not to know. The words hurt him because they were accurate. He had built his life around not knowing enough to object. I failed you, he said. My mother turned. George, she saved the house. She saved Adrian's company. She paid our doctors. And today we made her eat with staff. I was protecting the wedding from our daughter. His voice broke. We treated the person carrying us as if she were dirt. My mother began crying. I did not know. You knew she was your child, he said. The garden fell quiet. For once, my father had chosen a side before the outcome became comfortable. It did not erase decades of silence, but it mattered. Adrian turned on him. Do not become righteous now. You signed everything. Because I trusted you. That was your mistake. My father looked at him for a long moment. Yes. The reception continued in fragments. Many guests left. Others remained because curiosity overpowered discomfort. The kitchen served dinner because food had already been prepared and employees deserved wages. Celeste's family occupied a private room with counsel. The officiant departed. Musicians played softly until Senator Warren asked them to stop. My mother sat at the family table without touching her plate. Adrian moved between lawyers, investors, and guests, attempting to preserve agreements. Each conversation ended faster than the last. I changed back into the Navy dress before dinner. The power suit had served its purpose, and I did not want to spend the evening dressed as a symbol. Lila seated me in the chair that had carried my name. My mother watched me take the place she had kept empty for photographs. You could have sat there from the beginning, she said. You told the staff not to seat me. I was ashamed of the dress. No, you were ashamed of what you thought I earned. She looked down. Yes, the honesty surprised me. Would you have treated me differently? If I knew? Yes, of course. Then you still do not understand. What do you want me to say? That a low-paid daughter deserved a chair, too. Her mouth trembled. I thought Adrian's marriage could lift all of us. I had already lifted all of you. I did not know. You never looked down to see what was holding you. She began crying again, but this time she did not reach for me. Are we losing Cedar Crest? The occupancy agreement has been terminated for fraud, but the receiver will offer you a new lease at market-adjusted terms based on pension income. You may also move into the smaller Aegis property near Father's doctors. You are charging us rent? Yes. After everything we gave you, listed. She stared at me. We raised you. You fed, clothed, and housed your child. I am grateful for care that was real. It does not create permanent financial ownership. Adrian will have nowhere. He has personal savings outside frozen accounts and can apply for housing. He has never lived alone. He is 38. He nearly lost everything tonight. He nearly sold your home. Her maternal instincts still moved toward him even after hearing the recording. Change would not happen because one screen displayed facts. You still protect him, I said. He needs me. He learned to need you because need guaranteed forgiveness. And you never needed me. I needed you to choose me. You chose my money without knowing it was mine. She looked at the empty table settings. I am sorry for what? For the uniform. the chair, the way I spoke. In the 10 years, I do not understand all of them yet. That was more honest than a complete apology delivered too quickly. Then begin there, I said. At 11:45, Daniel joined me in the library. The legal team confirmed every condition. Adrian had not cured the defaults. No investor had provided replacement funds. Celeste had formally suspended the marriage and requested independent counsel. The Warren family had withdrawn from the Quay agreement. The estate contract would expire. You can still delay activation, Daniel said. Another extension would require board approval and new security. Would it protect employees? Employees are already protected through the receiver. Vendors? Paid. My parents' medication and temporary housing excluded from freezes. Celeste's belongings, personal property remains hers. The dress was purchased by the Warren family. The ring is secured voluntarily. Adrian's lawful personal funds? Untouched except where a court identifies proceeds from false statements. I looked at the silver clock above the fireplace. Activated 12:01. Biometric confirmation required at midnight. I will be in the command room. You do not need to watch every account freeze. I know. Then why? Because I spent 10 years signing rescues alone. I will sign the end of them consciously. At 11:55, the remaining guests gathered on the terrace for fireworks that would no longer occur. Adrian had promised a midnight display without paying the pyrotechnics vendor. We had canceled it for safety. The sky remained dark above the estate. In the underground command room, screens displayed asset lists, access controls, banking notices, vendor payments, employee protections, and court authorizations. Daniel stood beside me. Lila remained near the door. At midnight, the system requested confirmation. I pressed my thumb against the scanner and said, "Activate Midnight Protocol." At 12:01, the estate's private event access expired. Guest elevators changed to departure mode. Adrian's corporate credentials were revoked. Aegis controlled credit lines froze. The Quay proposal disappeared from the deal platform. Receivers gained custody of pledged company records. The ring collateral entered secure storage. The reserve wine cellar locked automatically. Antique furniture scheduled for attempted transfer was tagged. Vehicles purchased through Adrian's company facilities were immobilized remotely only after court-approved notices reached their owners. The supercars in the drive remained available if personally owned. The black sedan Adrian believed belonged to him was collected because it was leased by his company. Payroll funds moved into a protected account. Construction projects transferred to interim managers. Banking compliance notices identified false statements and default events. Nothing exploded. No mass team stormed the ballroom. Real financial collapse sounded like printers, notification tones, doors changing access status, and phones vibrating in the hands of people who had assumed tomorrow would resemble today. Adrian reached the command room corridor at 12:07, followed by 2 security officers. "Open the accounts," he shouted. "No, my cards are dead. Corporate cards. The hotel says I have to leave. The event contract ended. This is my wedding night. You are not married. Because of you. Because Celeste learned the truth before signing. You stole everything in 7 minutes. Aegis secured property tied to default and fraud. Your lawful personal belongings remain yours. The wine, furniture, cars, borrowed. The ring, pledged. The company, in receivership. You planned this for months. I prepared it after audit findings. You received notices. I want another extension. No, I am your brother. That is not a credit instrument." He struck the wall beside the door. Security moved, but he did not attack me. "You think you won," he said. "I think the rescue cycle ended. You destroyed the family. I stopped financing the structures that allowed the family to destroy anyone beneath Adrian Quinn. You always wanted to be the center. I wanted a chair at your wedding." His anger weakened for 1 second. "You could have had one. Your mother assigned me to the staff hall. I did not know. You saw the uniform. I thought you agreed. You thought silence meant agreement because it benefited you." He looked away. "What happens tomorrow?" "The receiver meets your employees. You cooperate with the audit. You retain counsel. You disclose all assets. You stop representing Aegis as a partner. You find housing. And our parents, they will choose between a market lease at Cedar Crest or the smaller property. Mother will never forgive you. That is her choice. Celeste, also her choice." He looked at me as though he expected the old solution to appear if he waited long enough. I had always been the quiet person behind the next door, arranging money, lawyers, and grace. "Rachel," he said, "please." It was the first sincere plea I had heard from him in years. "What are you asking?" "Do not leave me with nothing. You had education, health, experience, personal savings, and the chance to cooperate. Nothing is not the absence of luxury. I do not know how to rebuild. Then learn. You built Aegis in secret. I built it while working 2 jobs after our father's company failed. You could teach me. Not while you believe teaching means transferring ownership. What would make you help?" The question still treated care as a price. "Accountability without negotiation," I said. "Then perhaps, later, I can support a legitimate plan reviewed by people who are not family." "You would make me apply like everyone else?" "Yes." He laughed bitterly. "You really hate me." "No. I finally stopped loving you in the form you preferred." Security escorted him upstairs to collect personal belongings. At 12:30, Blackwood Manor emptied. Staff removed wedding decorations carefully. Flowers were sent to hospitals and care homes with Celeste's permission. Unopened food went to shelters. The musicians were paid in full. The rented art returned to storage. The reserved champagne remained in the cellar. The empty marriage register lay on the altar table until the officiant's assistant collected it. I walked through the ballroom after everyone left. The tables were still dressed in gold. An abandoned place car bore my mother's name. A white service jacket remained folded near the kitchen entrance. I carried it into the laundry room and placed it with the others. Lila found me there. "You do not have to clean tonight," she said. "I am not cleaning." "Then what are you doing?" "Returning the uniform." "You could burn it. It belongs to the catering company." She smiled. "That answer is why Daniel still has hair." At dawn, receivers entered Adrian's corporate offices and the Cedar Crest property under separate orders. My parents were not awakened by armed security. They had been notified at the wedding and returned with counsel. They found inventory teams documenting furniture purchased through Aegis loans. Most personal items remain untouched. Luxury art, electronics, and wine bought with Adrian's company funds were removed. A notice on the door explained the lease options and prohibited sale or transfer. The house looked emptier because my mother had filled it with borrowed symbols. The image circulated online anyway. Blank walls, covered furniture, an eviction notice, and my parents standing in the foyer wearing yesterday's formal clothes. Headlines said they woke homeless. They did not. They had legal housing options and 30 days to decide. Adrian's contracts disappeared because counterparties withdrew after reviewing the audit. No central blacklist existed. Banks independently closed or restricted accounts connected to false statements, defaults, and fraud alerts. He called it blacklisting. Compliance officers called it risk. Celeste ended the engagement publicly 1 week later. Her statement acknowledged that she had participated in discussions about selling Cedar Crest without verifying ownership and apologized to my parents. She returned every gift linked to Adrian's financing and cooperated with investigators. Senator Warren withdrew from the Quay project. He faced political criticism but no charges. Celeste asked to meet me privately. We sat in the library at Blackwood 2 months later. She wore no jewelry and looked younger without the performance surrounding the wedding. "I treated you like staff," she said. "You thought I was staff. That does not excuse it." "No. I was raised to think kindness toward employees meant speaking politely and paying well. I never asked whether I saw them as equal. Most people perform kindness downward when the hierarchy is visible. Respect begins when hierarchy stops determining humanity." She nodded. "Adrian told me your parents were dependent because they had poor financial judgment." He made himself sound like their protector. "He learned from watching me do it invisibly." "Did you love him?" "He is my brother." "That is not an answer." "I loved who he might become if rescue finally gave him enough stability." I ignored that rescue was protecting him from becoming anyone else. She looked toward the window. I loved the version of myself reflected in his ambition. We made each other look important. That is not the same as partnership. I know now. Celeste later created a financial disclosure policy in her family foundation and spoke publicly about relationship contracts used to hide corporate deals. We never became friends, but she did not remain a convenient villain. She had caused harm and also faced a system that treated marriage as an acquisition. Understanding both did not erase responsibility. Adrian's legal case lasted 2 years. The audit found fraud, false asset statements, misuse of company credit, and attempts to pledge property he did not own. Prosecutors charged him with wire fraud, bank fraud, and falsification of financial records. He cooperated after 6 months, returned assets, and provided evidence against the broker who helped create false title documents. He avoided prison through a negotiated sentence involving home confinement, restitution, community service, and a 10-year ban from serving as an officer of a regulated company. Some people called the outcome too soft. Others treated the wedding humiliation as punishment enough. Courts are not supposed to calculate viral embarrassment. They considered evidence, cooperation, financial loss, and risk. I submitted a factual statement and did not request incarceration. I wanted accountability, not a brother preserved permanently as a symbol of failure. My parents' role was different. My father had signed documents without reading and allowed Adrian to present false statements, but evidence showed he did not understand the planned sale or financing fraud. He faced civil consequences, not criminal charges. My mother had pressured vendors, signed blank transfers, and knowingly misrepresented Adrian's Sterling Oak appointment to donors. She entered a civil settlement, repaid funds through the sale of luxury assets, and was barred from managing charitable accounts for 5 years. Cedar Crest remained in the trust. They chose the smaller Aegis property near my father's doctor's because the market lease on the villa was more than their pension could support. My mother described the move as exile. The new home had 3 bedrooms, a garden, and no staff. It was more comfortable than most people could afford. Losing luxury felt like cruelty because she had forgotten the difference between comfort and entitlement. We did not speak for 8 months. My father wrote first. I spent years thanking Adrian for money you provided, he said. I do not know which shame is worse, failing to ask where the help came from or allowing your mother to hide you at the wedding. He admitted that he saw me in the service uniform and chose not to intervene. I told myself it was your decision. That is the lie passive people use when another person's choice would require conflict. The sentence was honest. I agreed to meet him alone. We sat in a small cafe near his medical clinic. He looked older without the villa, formal clothes, and family events framing him. Why did you never tell me about Aegis? He asked. Would you have protected me if I still worked in a warehouse? He looked down. I want to say yes. Do you believe it? Not completely, then that is the work. He apologized without asking for the house back. We began seeing each other every few months. I did not restore financial dependence. Aegis paid only obligations established before the protocol, including medical support written into the original occupancy agreement. He managed the rest from pension income. The limitation frightened him, then gave him a form of dignity he had surrendered while allowing children and wife to control every decision. He began volunteering at a small construction skills program and taught apprentices how to estimate materials honestly. My mother's first letter accused me of public cruelty. Her second said Adrian's career had been destroyed because I needed revenge. Her third asked for money to replace furniture removed from Cedar Crest. I answered none. 6 months later, she sent 1 page. I looked at the photograph of you serving wine. I keep telling myself I did not recognize you because of the uniform. The truth is that I recognized my daughter and decided the role suited her. That was the first sentence worth reading twice. She continued, I believed Adrian's success would prove I had raised an important son. Your success frightened me because it did not require me. I called you ordinary to preserve my place above you. I did not forgive her after 1 letter. I agreed to a meeting with a therapist present. She entered wearing simple clothes and no pearls. Do you still own Blackwood? She asked. Yes. Will I ever be invited again? That is not why we are here. I know. She folded her hands. I made you eat with staff. The staff treated me better than the family table. I know. Do you? Leela told me I offered you a chair in the kitchen. I did not offer you one in the ceremony. She began crying. I thought Adrian's wedding would lift us into a world where no one remembered our failures. You were already living in a house I saved, but I did not know it was you that should not matter, but it did. Then you understand the problem. I understand the words. I do not know whether I have changed enough to live them. We established limited contact. No money, no property access, no public statements about reconciliation, no requests involving Adrian. She failed several times, asking indirectly whether Cedar Crest might return to the family. I ended those conversations. Boundaries became practice rather than a dramatic declaration. Over time, she learned that contact continued only when respect did. Adrian completed home confinement and began working for a nonprofit construction cooperative. His officer band prevented executive roles, but he could estimate projects, manage field schedules under supervision, and rebuild professional trust. He wrote to me after the first year. I thought the Midnight Protocol destroyed me, he said. What it destroyed was the distance between my choices and their cost. He admitted that he planned to remove our parents from Cedar Crest. I told myself they would accept a smaller place because I was building something historic. I used the same logic Mother used with you. One person's comfort could be sacrificed for the family member whose future mattered more. He did not ask for Aegis employment. That was important. I replied that we could meet after restitution milestones were completed. 3 years after the wedding, we sat in the garden of the former Cedar Crest property, which I had converted into a financial recovery center for families facing foreclosure and business fraud. The villa no longer functioned as a private residence. Guest rooms housed clients temporarily.
My mother hated that strangers
Slept in what she still called her home. I called it a better use of an asset purchase to prevent homelessness. Adrian looked toward the terrace where he once hosted parties. You changed everything. The building remained. Its purpose changed. Do you regret helping me? I regret helping without conditions. Did any of it matter? Your employees kept jobs. Some projects were completed. You had chances. I wasted them. Many. He smiled weakly. You never soften numbers. Numbers soften enough on their own when people explain them. Do you hate me? Sometimes. Do you love me? Sometimes. Mother said the same answer was cruel. Reality often feels cruel to people who prefer one emotion at a time. He looked toward the center sign. Could I volunteer here? Not immediately. Conflict review first. You cannot use the center as evidence that the family forgave you. I thought you might say that. Then you are learning. He eventually joined as a supervised guest lecturer, describing how executives use family property and borrow status to conceal risk. He told participants, I believe confidence could substitute for ownership because no one forced me to distinguish them. His honesty helped others without converting him into a hero. Redemption is not another promotion. It is repeated behavior after applause disappears. Aegis Global changed too. My secrecy had protected me, but it also created ethical problems. Employees who interacted with me under incomplete identity could not meaningfully understand the power in the room. I ordered an independent review of my decision to attend the wedding undercover as service staff while holding enforcement authority. The committee found no legal breach, but criticized the personal entanglement and risk that my desire for public reversal influenced our timing. They were right. I published the findings internally and created rules preventing controlling owners from participating in covert operational observation during active enforcement decisions. Whistleblower systems, independent audits, and employee councils became the proper tools. I no longer needed to disguise myself as powerless to discover disrespect. Institutions should protect ordinary workers without waiting for the server to reveal she owns the estate. Blackwood Manor became an Aegis Leadership Institute and public benefit venue. Weddings still occurred there, but contracts required transparent financing and prohibited use of employees as social props. The service hall gained the same finishes as guest corridors because architecture teaches hierarchy before people speak. Lala became director of hospitality ethics. She laughed at the title and accepted the salary. The reserve wine remained restricted. My mother never received the 1996 vintage. Celeste eventually married a public interest attorney in a small ceremony without corporate sponsors. She invited me. I attended as a guest in the navy dress. No one asked me to serve. We spoke briefly beside the reception table. You wore it again, she said. It is a good dress. I thought it looked cheap. You thought cost and dignity were related. I was wrong. Yes, she smiled, still direct, still efficient. We were not close, but the absence of hostility felt honest. My father died 7 years after the wedding. In his final months, he lived in a smaller house and refused offers to move into private Aegis care. He said he wanted treatment through the same system available to retired builders in his program. I respected the choice and ensured the system was worthy rather than purchasing special treatment. Before he died, he gave me back the old company ledger I had corrected as a teenager. "You were carrying us before any of us understood," he said. "I should have asked whether you wanted to. Would you have heard the answer? Not then. You hear it now."
Yes.
I sat beside him until the end. My mother remained with him too. Grief did not erase our boundaries, but we did not turn his death into another contest. The Adrian delivered the eulogy and spoke about our father's passivity with unusual honesty. "He loved peace," Adrian said, "and sometimes called silence peace, even when someone else paid for it." My mother cried. So did I. Truth did not dishonor him. It made the love less decorative. My relationship with my mother improved in narrow ways. She never fully stopped measuring status, but she learned to notice the impulse. When she referred to service work as simple, I corrected her. When she began praising Adrian's recovery more than my labor, he corrected her himself. That mattered. Years later, she asked to visit Blackwood. I agreed under one condition. She entered through the service hall first. She looked afraid that I intended humiliation. Instead, Lila gave her a tour of the kitchens, staff lounge, event systems, and labor that supported every ceremony. My mother spoke with servers, cleaners, drivers, cooks, florists, and security staff. At the end, Lila asked what she had noticed. "The house does not run from the ballroom," my mother said. "No house does," Lila replied. We had tea in the library afterward. My mother touched the sleeve of my navy dress. I never apologized to the staff for using their uniform as an insult. "You can." She did, not publicly, not as branding. She wrote to the team and donated time, not money, to the hospitality training program. Change was late, incomplete, and real enough to acknowledge. I never returned Cedar Crest as a private family home. Some relatives called that vindictive. The property served hundreds of families facing foreclosure, offered legal counseling, and prevented children from losing housing because adults concealed. My mother's nostalgia did not outweigh that purpose. Forgiveness does not require reversing every consequence. Adrian never returned to luxury development. He became operations director for the cooperative after his ban expired, elected by employees rather than appointed by me. When he applied for an Aegis supplier contract years later, I recused myself. Independent procurement rejected the first proposal because his pricing was unrealistic. He revised it and won a smaller project the following year. He called me afterward. "I earned it," he said. "The committee believes you did." That is the closest thing to congratulations I will get. "Congratulations," he laughed. "You could have said that first. You needed the other sentence more." He was right. The story of the wedding continued spreading online in exaggerated versions. Some said I arrived in a private helicopter. I entered from a service corridor. Some said armed guards ripped jewelry from guests. No one touched a guest. Some said my parents woke in an empty house with 5 minutes to leave. They received legal notice and housing options. Some said I blacklisted Adrian from every bank. Regulated institutions responded independently to fraud alerts and defaults. Some said I objected because I secretly loved the groom. He was my brother, which made the humiliation easier for audiences to understand and harder for them to romanticize. The most popular title remained. Mocked as trash and forced to eat with staff at my brother's wedding. During the vows, I revealed I owned the estate and evicted the entire family. It captured the reversal and missed the structure. I did not object to a marriage simply because I was insulted. I disclosed fraud before a legal commitment. I did not evict an entire family from a permanent home during vows. I ended an event contract and enforced property rights under court supervision. The dramatic truth attracted people. The precise truth protected them. That distinction became central to how I spoke about power. Money can make revenge look like justice because both produce visible consequences. The test is what happens to innocent people, whether rules apply consistently, and whether the powerful person submits her own anger to review. I failed that test imperfectly. I wanted witnesses. I timed the reveal partly because humiliation had occurred publicly. I allowed the symbolism of 12-1 to matter more than necessary. But I protected employees, vendors, guests, medical care, lawful assets, and due process. I admitted the personal motive instead of calling every feeling fiduciary duty. Ethical leadership is not purity. It is building restraint strong enough to survive impurity. I eventually transferred controlling shares of Aegis into a permanent public benefit and employee trust. I kept a significant economic interest and served as non-executive chair, but no child, sibling, spouse, or parent could inherit absolute voting control. The board asked whether the decision was shaped by Adrian's attempt to convert family property into business capital. Completely, I said. Dynasties turn affection into governance and inheritance into moral proof. A company this large should not depend on who sits at my family table. Employees received ownership. Infrastructure funds gained protected seats. Medical and disaster response subsidiaries adopted mission locks. Leadership became qualified, reviewed, and removable. Adrian joked that I had finally evicted the entire Quinn family from Aegis, including myself. I said, that is the point. I never married quickly. Years of hidden wealth and family exploitation made intimacy difficult. I met Daniel Cho's younger sister, Dr. Lena Cho, during the Aegis Disaster Recovery Project. She knew my identity from the beginning and challenged me from the first meeting. We became friends, then partners, then spouses, after years of direct conversations about money, power, privacy, and the danger of using emotional tests instead of honest questions. Our wedding took place at Blackwood with 40 guests. Lila selected the catering team. Every employee was introduced by name. My mother attended and sat beside a nurse. Adrian attended without a title on the program. Celeste sent flowers. I wore the navy dress during the rehearsal dinner and an ivory suit for the ceremony. There were no vows about completing each other. We promised to remain people who could say no without making love feel threatened. At midnight, nothing froze. No protocol activated. Staff opened the reserve champagne because it had been approved in the contract. Lena laughed when I asked to see the written authorization. You own the estate, she said. The trust owns it. You wrote the trust. Still not the same. This is why people find you exhausting. You married me knowingly. That ordinary teasing inside a transparent relationship felt more luxurious than any ballroom. On the 20th anniversary of Aegis, I stood in Blackwood's lower garden where Adrian's wedding had ended. New executives, apprentices, warehouse staff, drivers, engineers, and community partners occupied the same rows once filled with senators and bankers. A plaque near the altar did not mention the family scandal. It read, "No person. Dignity depends on the title," reread later. The idea came from Leela. I spoke about invisible labor, debt transparency, and leadership structures. During questions, a young server asked whether I regretted wearing the uniform that night. No, I said. I regret that my family believed the uniform made humiliation acceptable. The work itself was honorable. Did owning the estate make you feel safe? For a few minutes. What made you feel safe afterward? I looked toward Lena, Daniel, Lila, Adrian, my mother, and the employees who had no reason to worship me. Boundaries that did not depend on secrecy. Systems that protected people without dramatic reveals. Relationships where help was not a hidden invoice. After the event, I remained alone in the garden as evening settled over the trees. The wedding arch had long been removed, but I remembered the empty chair with my name, my mother's fingers gripping my arm, Adrian laughing at the uniform, and Celeste placing the ring inside a glass. I also remembered my father saying we had treated the person carrying us as dirt. He could not repair the past, but the sentence broke the family's central lie. I remembered Lila telling me my power revealed itself before the suit. I remembered Daniel warning me not to disguise revenge as governance. I remembered Adrian asking how to rebuild. The story had never truly been about revealing that I was rich. Had I been exactly what they believed, a low-paid logistics worker wearing an old dress, the wedding humiliation would still have been wrong. Had I owned no estate, my mother would still have owed me a chair. Had I funded none of their lives, Adrian's plan to displace our parents would still have revealed his character. Wealth gave me leverage, evidence, and a stage. It did not create my worth. That was the lesson I had avoided while secretly paying everyone's bills. I believed that if I carried enough weight quietly, my family would eventually recognize love and the support. Instead, invisible support became proof that they were entitled to stand. They did not know the machine had a face until it stopped. The midnight protocol was dramatic because everything dependent on me changed at once. But the real transformation had begun earlier when I heard Adrian say our parents could be placed somewhere smaller and understood that no amount of rescue had taught him responsibility. It continued when my mother admitted she would have treated me differently if she knew. It deepened when my father accepted that silence was not peace. It became permanent when I stopped asking power to produce the love power had distorted. I did not win because my family lost a wedding, a manor, or a business empire. I won when I allowed them to face consequences without rushing to purchase relief. I won when employees remained paid while executives lost access. I won when Celeste received the truth before marriage rather than after. I won when Cedar Crest became protection for strangers instead of another symbol my mother guarded. I won when Adrian earned a small contract without calling me. I won when my mother entered the service hall and saw the people she had used as a category. I won when Aegis passed beyond family ownership. Most of all, I won when the Old Navy dress stopped representing the woman they underestimated and returned to being simply a dress I liked. On the last evening I spent as Blackwood's private owner, before transferring it fully into the leadership trust, I walked through the manor alone. The ballroom floors reflected the chandelier. The library smelled of leather and cedar. In the service hall, uniforms hung neatly beside polished shoes. I touched the sleeve of one black jacket and remembered the first hours of that wedding. My mother had believed putting me in it moved me downward. In reality, it placed me beside the people who understood the house, the contracts, the timing, and the labor better than any guest. Adrian had stood at the altar surrounded by symbols he did not own. I had stood beside the kitchen carrying something real. That was why the final reveal worked. Not because a poor sister transformed into a billionaire chairwoman in one instant, but because nothing about me had changed except what the room knew. I owned the estate while serving champagne. I controlled the debt while being denied a seat. I had protected my parents while Adrian planned to discard them. I had built Aegis while my mother called my work ordinary. The suit did not create authority. The documents did not create intelligence. The applause did not create dignity. They merely forced people who benefited from ignoring those things to acknowledge them. When I left the manor, the clocks approached midnight. No alarm sounded. No assets froze. The gate opened automatically, and I drove away without looking back at the balcony where my family once expected fireworks. The midnight protocol had ended one chapter of my life, but freedom came from no longer needing every betrayal to end in spectacle. Some doors closed through court orders, others closed through silence. The most important one closed when I stopped believing that being the family's hidden provider was the same as belonging. I had been treated like trash and made to eat with staff because they thought my value was low. I later revealed that I owned the estate, but ownership was never the answer to their judgments. The answer was that no human being should need a deed, a trust, a billion-dollar company, or a room full of witnesses before saying, I deserve a place at this table, goodbye.